All right. Hello, everyone. And thank you for tuning in for another Authors Impact Hub podcast. So I am your host, Juanita Woodson, founder of the Authors Impact Hub. And we've been going really strong with our author Q&A. So today I'm excited to bring on another author, but more than just an author, right? I'm going to call her the pre-order guru, right? So we have Ashley Shepard on with us from Shep Publishing House. So I'm excited to learn more about her journey and then all the things that she has to share. So I always let the authors do their own introduction. So I'm going to pass it over to you if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure, yeah. First of all, thank you for having me here, and I'm excited to be here. I know we've kind of crossed paths in the digital space multiple times, and so it's good to connect. So I am Ashley Shepard. I'm the owner of Shep Publishing House, and we help authors get from the page to the people with efficient and effective marketing strategies so they can sell more books, reach more readers, change more lives, and of course, make more money. Because at the end of the day, you need money to move things. So I predominantly work with self-published authors as a consultant to help them to navigate what are the best decisions for them based upon their goals, and then also, of course, with the self-publishing side to be able to bring their books to life.
Yeah, it's awesome. So what kind of motivated you to step into that space as a published author and then taking it a step further and now helping other authors with getting their books out there?
So I became an author in 2020, and it was a result of I didn't see what I needed out in the space. I was a new mom, and my son was born 6 months before the pandemic, and outside was bananas then with things that were happening with census killings of African Americans, and then being a new mom to a Black son. So I was looking for resources that helped to navigate that, but then also dealing with I had a great pregnancy, but dealing with the postpartum period and navigating it, where if any of your listeners are moms, if you hear, oh, well, you're healthy, your baby's healthy, everything should be fine. But then sometimes you're like, well, everything's not quite fine. So I didn't see the types of resources that I needed out there. So I decided to create a guided journal after attending a training with one of my mentors, Crystal Swain Bates. She is a phenomenal force in the self published author industry. And so she's sold almost 1 million books as a self-published author. And so she did a journal writing challenge. And so I participated in that. And then at the same time, I had a book that I didn't really intend for it to become a book. It started off as an email challenge. And then that's on the Daniel fast. And at that time, as I was sending out the emails, writing emails daily for 21 days to help people to do the challenge, someone emailed me and said, hey, this should be a book. And so I said, okay, say less. That's fine. Let's make it a book. And that has become my best selling book as well, because before all that, I also have a separate business in the food space. And so that's kind of my foray into this. So from food, motherhood, food, faith, and family is essentially the pillars for that business, Chef Ashley Chef. And so I didn't intend to become an author. I was never like, oh, I want to be an author. At the time, I was teaching and teaching literacy. And so reading, writing, all of that was really ingrained in what I did in my daily life. However, I never had a desire of like, oh, I always want to be an author. That had never been something I wanted to do. And so I came into it because I wanted to have a book that was helpful for me as a first time mom, navigating spaces with challenges and things that were unexpected. And then because someone said, okay, let's make this a book, I said, okay, all right, we can make it a book. And so through the success of my books, people started recognizing and seeing, oh, well, okay, you've sold this many books in a short time period. And most self published authors, you always hear that stat.
Yeah.
They don't sell more than 200, 250 in their lifetime, and you did it in 2 months. And so, as a first timer, and so through that, people have just been gravitating towards me in terms of helping them sell their books. And so, then the following year, so 2020 to 2021, I started my own publishing agency, and then the rest is history. So now we're here.
Yes, yes, awesome. So you went from teaching, which in a way you still are teaching, right? You just do it in a different realm. And then you're also a chef, and then now you help others to publish. So how do you balance all the things and motherhood?
Right, yeah. So, definitely having a great support system. And so my husband is phenomenal. And then my mom helps out with the kids as well. And so really balancing and seeing what fits in that stage of her life. So at the time when I was teaching, I would teach normal school day, and then after hours on just one day of the week, I would go and do meal planning for families. And I did that for about 2 years. And then once I had my family, I said, I can't do this anymore because I'm not seeing my child. And so I shifted that business to be more digital products. So now that is focusing on master classes. And then once I became an author, I said, okay, well, actually, cookbooks, that's kind of a good area to focus on. And so I still love to cook. And so now I've not retracted, but I have, what is the word I'm looking for? Minimize mommy brain taking over. I have minimized the aspects of what that business looks like. So it's less of a focus of where I'm consistently trying to make meals for people. Now I'm teaching people how to make their meals, or I'm teaching people mealtime strategies so that they can not spend all day in the kitchen. And then my son likes to cook. My oldest likes to cook with me. And so that's a way to incorporate that with family. Just this past week, I had a cooking class with a church that purchased my cookbook. And my son saw the setup and he was like, oh, are you having a meeting? What are you doing? And he's 5. And so he's like, I want to come. Let me come cook with you. And so I asked them and they said it was fine and they enjoyed having him there. And so with that, going back to answer your question, doing things in a seasonal aspect, so doing things in different pockets, because I know many authors are multi-genre or many people are multifaceted in the terms of wanting to like, oh, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in this. And it's you could do those things, but doing those things in different seasons. So from the chef side of things, I had that business for, so it started in 2017. So I had that for about 3 years before I moved into being an author. And even within that, my time in authorship was focused on the food side. It was focused on the food and faith. And so I didn't start switching over to the publishing side until about 2021, 2022. And then I saw, okay, this is kind of picking up steam. I can help more people to be able to publish their books. And so let me kind of shift gears with that. And then when it comes to the author side, which is where I'm predominantly focused now, I
Okay.
look at it as there's certain seasons where I'm going to focus on Chef Freshly Shep. So December through February typically is a season for that because of my book's topic is seasonal for the Daniel fast. And
Okay.
then I know throughout the rest of the year, okay, I'm going to focus on authors. I'm going to focus on marketing my own books, helping people sell their books, because most books are not typically seasonal. And also having help. So I don't do all this by myself. So having the family help, but then also have an assistant. I've had 2 virtual assistants over the years to be able to help with different items, to schedule things out or to create graphics or things like that. So it's not just me having to do all those things. But it can definitely be a lot if you try to do all of it at the same time. And that's something that a lot of authors assume that you have to be consistently marketing your book for it to sell. And if you do your marketing right at the beginning, then you actually can kind of ride that wave so that you're
Right.
not having to consistently market. And you can market in different seasons, or you can do like the anniversary of the book. There's just so many different strategies you can do. So you're not just always on that hamster wheel.
Yes, yes, I love it. So if you remember when I started, I called her the pre-order guru, right? So I follow you on social media and I know you're always dropping like those little gems when it comes to having successful launches through pre-orders, right? And I've taken a lot of tips away, but I know that there's a lot more that you are getting ready to share. So I follow you, so I know you're getting ready to drop another book really soon. Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually going to be my first book that's about author stuff, and so I'm excited because that's something that is just different. And I had to get over a little bit of imposter syndrome over that. Of like, this is a book, like when you write a book, it's like official. It's not just you posting things on the internet. It's like you've sat down, taken time to create this thing, and so it's going to be called Profitable Publishing with Preorders, and it will help self-published authors or independent authors to be able to host 4 and 5 figure pre-sales to be able to cover the cost of their publishing. And I like to say that it will help you to create your own advance as a self-published author because, as you know, typically if you're going to go the traditional route, often people do that because traditional publishing route, they do that because they can't cover the cost of publishing or they don't want to handle all the little details and things of that sort. However, often and not always. Often, authors who previously traditionally published, they start to see, okay, well, there's a lot of benefits to self-publishing, and they also start to see the ownership and that kind of aspect. And so, this is for the authors who either didn't consider traditional publishing or they thought about it and their book just wasn't accepted at a traditional publisher and maybe finances might be an issue for them. Or it's somebody who's just like, I don't want to pay for publishing. I'm going to do a boss move and cover my costs before my book's even out. And then that way I can release on my own schedule, my own cadence. I don't have to worry about when I'm going to get back into the black with my money
Right.
that I spent for this publishing. And so it's something that I've done 4 times with my own books. I've been able to cover the cost of publishing for each of my 4 books, and including this book that's out because it's not done yet, but it's the publishing costs are covered and over and above. And then I've also helped dozens of author clients to be able to do the same for their books.
Yes, awesome. I love that. So when you talk to self-published authors, right, and then maybe even in your own experience, because you have multiple books that you have released, what are some of the challenges that you've seen, and then how do you overcome those challenges or give tips to overcome them?
Yeah. So one of the things that I see is self confidence and self doubt. So
Yeah.
I don't know what is in the water that indie and self published authors are drinking. And I'm not saying I never have those things. I definitely have
Yeah.
times where I'm like, "Ah, okay, people don't like this." But like
Yeah.
the level of just uncertainty of yourself, imposter syndrome, things like that, it is so high with authors. And I don't know if it's just being a creative person because you're putting your heart and your soul out there
Out there, yes.
for people to see. But the aspect of that in terms of knowing who your reader is and not knowing who your reader is, let me frame it like that. That goes hand in hand because I also see a lot of authors are just shouting into the void saying, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. They don't know who they're talking to. They're just like, any sales are great. Whoever buys it is wonderful. And I'm working to reframe that because honestly, if you have somebody who's buying your book out of pity or buying your book because they're like, oh, I just want to support you, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But if your goal is continuous sales, if your goal is to get people who will actually read the book,
Right.
recommend the book, review the book, then you want to find people who are your raving fans. You want to find people who are your ideal readers, your right readers. And that's a mindset shift that I am diligently working to help authors overcome because everybody doesn't have to read your book. Like everybody
Right.
doesn't have to be your reader, and you can still make however much money you need to make to meet your goals, whether you're just trying to get enough to cover daycare or if you're trying to become a full-time author. You
Right.
don't have to have everybody to buy your book. There are 8 billion people in the world, and you need less than 1% of those people to buy your book, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
So, um,
Okay.
that's probably the biggest thing. Um, and then one other thing I'll say is not wanting to market their books. And so, I know you are familiar with this, but the amount of energy that's spent in publishing, you got to keep that same energy and do that same level of depth in your marketing because it's something where if you don't, if you spend all your time and energy focused on your publishing, you spend all your time and energy focused on your editing, things like that, then you are going to be exhausted by the time it comes to marketing. And you are also going to not want to do it point blank.
Right. Exactly.
So that would be the biggest thing is that it's a sentiment of, oh, I hate marketing. And unless you're a business owner, then you understand like marketing is just a part of
Yeah.
it's part of the game. Otherwise, if you are not as inclined to that in the business aspect, then it can be really challenging to feel like, oh, okay, well, I need to market my book. Um, and that's not something that I really feel like doing because I don't have enough energy to do it. So
Yeah. And I think one thing that I've asked this question, right? Are you doing this as a hobby? So you don't really care if it just collects dust on the shelf, you just needed to check this off your bucket list? Or are you actually trying to see profit and become what we say an authorpreneur? And I
right.
think if you get clear on that and get clear on your vision, then that will help you kind of decide which lane you're going to take when it comes to marketing your book.
For my own books?
No, just
Oh,
for
you're saying this is something
in
that you asked.
general.
Okay.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
authors in general, because when we think about, like, marketing and how a lot of authors, like, get that imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
maybe you're just doing it as a hobby, right? And maybe you didn't do it because you wanted to become, like, a successful author, and I see that a lot of times in authors, so I think you just have to get honest with yourself do I want to see profits with this or is it just a hobby? Me personally, I want to see a profit, right? I didn't spend all this time and money into just like seeing it collect dust on the shelf. So I think that like overcoming that fear is another big part or another big challenge for authors too.
Yeah, it is. And I think there's even something where people feel, not I think, but I know there's something where people are like, "Oh, I don't want to say that I want to make money." And I think it stems
Yeah.
from people feeling like, "Oh, you have to be a starving artist or you just have to give away your stuff for free," which I'm just like, "You don't. Like you have to you have to use money to be able to afford other things. Like even if it's like you're donating books, you still have to cover the cost to purchase those books. Even if it's you're going to do an author visit or you're doing something that's charitable, that still costs money. Like nonprofits still make money. They still have they still have things they need to do to be able to promote the nonprofit or to be able to be out there in these spaces. And so that's another notion. And it's something that I've had to get over as well. Just like, okay, I mean, this is what the price is. You're upfront about it. If you can afford it, great. If not, great, that's fine. And not in
Yeah.
like a cutthroat kind of way, but just of, okay, well, if this doesn't work for you, you can check out stuff over on my YouTube or you can check out this, or there's tons of
Right.
free things. Like if you just do the work from the free stuff, you still will get results and you'll be able to make the money that you need to. And that is another shift. And so I know there's a lot of authors who just want to write and they just want to like, they just want to get their books out there.
Yes.
That's the thing. And you just want to write. Well, to get your book out there, you need to have people who are willing to
Yeah.
be able to find your book, who want to read it. And maybe you need to pay for ads. Maybe you need to be able to give away copies because even if you do that, once again, you have to pay for stuff. So it's a mindset shift. And it's something where I'm really helping or working to hopefully help to dispel that because really it's a deeper thing. It's a wealth understanding or it's like a mental block around that because we've been conditioned to think, okay, if you are doing this thing for money, then that means that you're doing it in a soulless way or you're doing it in a way that is just if you're a believer, you're doing it with like, oh, that's ungodly. And it's like, but no, even the church needs like money. Like ministry takes money. They need to pay for the lights, they need to pay for the air conditioning, they gotta pay the musicians. Like there's stuff that has to be done. And you live in a world where in our at least in our side of the world,
Yeah.
capitalism is real. And so you have to pay for things. You have to be able to cover those costs. And if you are not covering those costs, that means you're having to pay for it from something else. So
Right.
I like to say the my paying clients pay for me to be able to have the time freedom to be able to do the free stuff. So like if I know that my expenses are covered, then okay, I have time to be able to pour into other people who might not be able to afford services or to
Right.
record YouTube videos or to do other things. And it's not a judgment call. It's just it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for me, so you kind of touched on like the imposter syndrome and like, hey, this is the price. I think that is something that authors do have to like really work towards because imposter syndrome had me in a chokehold, right? So I
Yeah.
really had to like, hey, I've worked hard to get to this place to be able to provide the information, right? To be able to share my testimony, my story, to pour back into other people and it's okay if some things cost because we do provide so many free resources. But I think, like you said, it's a mindset shift and just having to decide to invest in yourself in certain things. So I think that's important.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So when we talk about, right, earning the money, right? So pre-orders, how important is pre-orders when we talk about publishing? And what's like just one tip that you can maybe give to an author's like, I really have no idea how to even set up a pre-order.
Yeah, so typically if you are a author who your goal is to either make your money back from your book or at least to reach your readers, then profit has to come into play. You have to be mindful that you need to make a profit in order to do these things. And that's another shift that I'm noticing is that often authors think, okay, well, I just want to get my book in bookstores or I just want to get in front of these people and all these things cost money. And so once you make that shift to be profit focused, then it makes it possible for you to do everything else. And so you can hire a VA or a PA to help you. You can pay for a graphic designer or a cover designer. So you're not having to design those things yourself in Canva, which no shade to Canva. But when you hire somebody who has a design eye, unless you have a design eye, then okay, fire away. But
Right.
most authors don't have that design eye. And so when you're able to hire a professional for your cover design, when you're able to hire an editor,
Yes.
that's a soapbox that I like. I get that sometimes you don't have funds for those things. However, even if you get your book edited down the line, like maybe you need to release it and get it re-edited. I had to do that with
Right.
one of my books. And you just you don't really realize like your book is your inside and your outside. That's the entirety of the book. So your cover and your insides, like the editing and the cover, they need to be professional if you want to see the results you want to see. And making the shift and understanding that, okay, if I want people to buy my book, I want people to invest in me, I have to invest in myself.
Yeah.
Like it can't be the race, the fastest race to the cheapest cost. That can't be what it always is. If you're trying to make a bunch of money, you're trying to sell a bunch of books, you have to invest in those things. Because even myself, like I'm not doing the editing for my clients. I hire editors and then they do the editing. I'm not doing the cover design. I have the vision, even though I do
Right.
have a from my previous business, I did used to do design stuff, but so I can like see the vision, but I'm not designing
Right.
covers.
Yeah.
Even my books, I don't design my covers. I have a very clear idea of what I want it to look like and I'll do sketches and stuff like that. But you have to understand that you can't do everything. And in order to maximize your income, then you want to be, or maximize your book sales, maximize your income, you want to understand that you're going to have to make the investment. And so once you overcome that and prioritize profit because it pays for every other aspect of your book, then you're able to see, okay, now that I'm not like scrounging for pennies to try to cover my book costs, I can actually do the book that I want to do because I have the wiggle room, I have the finances to do it. And it just really shifts your frame because you're not having to just say, okay, is it just enough? It's like, no, I'm gonna do the book
Right.
the way that I want to do it. And I want it to look wonderful and I want it to look professional. I want it to look just as good as traditionally published books because self-publishing is real publishing. Um,
Okay.
let's be real.
Yes.
um, and so that shift, and then I'm sorry, remind me of the second part of your question. I don't feel like I answered that as closely as
Listen, I got lost when you were like self-publishing is real publishing because that's a topic all in itself.
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yes, but the second part of that question was, so what is one tip that you can give to authors who are thinking of or who have never done a pre-order?
Okay. So if you haven't done a pre-order before, you want to determine whether or not it's a good choice for you and your book. And so you have to be real with yourself because pre-orders are not for every book and they're not for everybody. And that's okay. So when you're thinking about it, you want to consider what are my goals here? So is my goal to capitalize on my book launch? So, I mean, if I'm already having a book launch and I'm already going to have to encourage people to buy the book, why not get paid faster? That's my take
Right.
on it. You've spent years writing this book, maybe months, years, whatever the case may be, and then you're waiting even longer to get paid. So I'm like, okay, we can speed that process up. But think about that, and then also think about if you are comfortable with selling something that doesn't quite exist yet, because that can be another thing. Some people think, okay, well, how do I sell a book that is not even physically there?
Right.
Or how can I get people to buy this thing? And that's what my book will teach the strategies of, and I have an accompanying course with it as well to walk through the process. But being okay and understanding that you're not actually a scammer, and you're not like scammers are not worried about scamming. So if
Right.
like real imposters, they're not worried about being imposters. They're just over here impersonating people and being shady. So if you know that's not you,
Right.
understanding that and being okay with that. Um, and having commitment and having the dedication to yourself to actually finish the work
Yeah.
because you can start your pre-order at different phases. So I recommend either starting it, and this is from the most risky to the least risky. So
Okay.
either starting it when you first got your book idea. So of like, okay, I'm writing a book. And that's your post, that's your announcement that you share with people. And then that gets people excited. And then you drip out information about the book over the time until it's released. And then that I wouldn't recommend if you've never done a pre-order before. That's more so if it's a shorter book or if it's like a guided journal where you know you can get it out pretty quickly.
Right.
Then the second option I recommend is to think about starting it when you are done with your developmental edits and around the time you're getting your beta reads done, because then that way you at least have a clear vision of what the book is going to look like. It's not going to have too many major changes with it.
Right.
And you at least can share, oh, got my book back from my editor, or my beta readers just got their copies, things like that. And then the last option is to um, open up your pre-order or start your pre-order after your book is completely done. It's in your hand. So maybe you have your author copy. And so thinking about your risk tolerance would be the suggestion there. Thinking about, okay, am I comfortable with the
Okay.
book not being completely done before I ask people for their money? Is this going to fit within my timeline of me being able to let people know about the book? Is it something where I'm going to be stressed to finish my book? and then I won't finish the book because I'm so stressed because I took people's money, or people
Right.
gave me money. It's not that you took their money; they willingly gave you the money.
Right.
And then just reframing your mind about pre-orders. I know people think we live in an Amazon microwave society of get it in a couple hours, get it in a day.
Right.
But if you think about it, I know at least I'm in the space of where my kids, they're not selling fundraisers yet. But I think about us growing up, like we were selling chocolate, candles. This popcorn is a thing now.
Popcorn.
Like the popcorn is taking over. So whoever's doing that, like people are always pre-ordering things. They're always pre-selling things. There's an app right now for Instagram. They just opened up a pre-release, not
Oh
paid,
yeah.
but a pre-release for their video editing app. And it's not gonna be out till March or earlier, but like people are downloading it to be able to have it ready. So the concept of pre-orders is not something that is wildly unusual. It's just something we forget about and we think, oh, people won't want to do that. So really shifting your mindset of what's possible and understanding that it is an option.
Yes. I love that you really broke that down because the honesty I think will help authors to reflect. Is this something that I have the mental capacity to do, right? Am I comfortable with this? Am I going to stress about it? So I love that honesty that, there is an option for you not to do a pre-order. It's wise to do one if you can handle it, but also just making sure that you connect with those people who can guide you through the pre-order, right? Like Ashley, she's the guru for this. So connecting with her, she can really give you those tips. So do you offer any done for you services when it comes to pre-orders?
Yes, I do. So currently I offer pre-order VIP days. And so essentially that means that we would create your offer. So create what you're going to sell because I'm a big proponent of not just selling your book. We're going to create experiences with our books. We're going to add additional things that are bonuses for our author or for our readers. And then we would create your copy. So create your writing for you, your social media posts, your emails, and then also map out the process for you. So that way, okay, on this day, this needs to happen. This day, this needs to happen, and then scheduling those things out for you. So yes, we do offer done for you services.
Okay, perfect. I love that. So when we think about connecting with our audience, right? So I know one thing that's always been big for me is knowing who my target audience is before I even start writing the book. That helps me when it comes to marketing. So when we think about that aspect of it, how much does that help you in marketing and pre-orders?
Tremendously. Just like you said, you do that first. That's the first thing. In my book, that's literally for the process, the pre-order profits framework. That's the first step is to understand who your reader is, to be able to not I always preface this because I don't want to sound creepy, but to basically know them like the back of your hand, not to the point of like being stalkerish, but like
Right.
understanding your reader. And so there's an acronym that I use in the book from the concept of raving fans. So the fans acronym. So finding your audience, attracting your audience, nurturing your audience, and then showing them love. And so finding those readers, understanding where they hang out, understanding what things they like, what they don't like, what kind of things are going to be attractive to them, because all of that dictates everything else. That dictates your publishing, and people don't really understand that. Authors often don't understand that. Oh, I need to know who this book is for before I write it. Yes, because especially for nonfiction books or children's books, or
Sure.
really actually romance, whatever your
Right.
genre is, it doesn't matter. Um, knowing who your reader is dictates whether or not people are going to buy it. So, for example, I'm a former elementary school teacher, and so there's certain books that I would buy for my students or buy for my classroom based upon what was in it. So if I knew I was teaching the Civil War at that point or teaching whatever we were teaching, if it was a literary skill, I would look for books that fit that, even if I was in the library or something like that. And if I knew, okay, this isn't on the curriculum or this isn't one that's going to fit, I can't fit it in, then I'm not gonna get that. And so if you are really focused on who your reader is and understanding what groups they hang out in and how they kind of move in those spaces, and you start to anticipate their needs and their wants, and then you can put that in your book. And so one strategy that I share with authors is to look at reviews of competitors, but not in a way that you're being like catty or that you're trying to copy, but look at reviews and look at the bad reviews. And once again, not in a way to be negative, but to see what was missing from that author's book to include it in your book. And Amazon has made that so much easier now because they have this AI feature on the bottom of their review section where it can say, most people said this thing, and then most people also said this thing. So
Yes, absolutely. And I look at it like writing a business plan for your book. right?
Mhm.
When you're writing a business plan, you have to do a competitor analysis, right? So I think that all of those things, when you do that mindset shift and you start to look at your authorship as a business, right?
Mhm.
Even if it's just that one book, it will really help you when it comes to connecting with your target audience. So, in your experience, how can authors effectively find their audience and connect with them? Not in like that creepy way that you said.
Yeah, so I want to say it's in chapter 6. I've been going back and forth in chapters. I'm doing the self-editing portion, which out. No, I'm sorry, chapter 7. So chapter 7, I break this down in my book. But ways to find your audience is to actually go hang out where they are. And typically, depending upon the book's topic, you might actually already be your ideal reader. So you might be in the group, like in the section of society. You might be in the demographic, you might be in the psychographic of your person, because typically we write books for people who are either right where we are or a few steps kind of behind us. And so, for example, this book that I'm writing now, I'm looking at groups that have newer authors or authors who have had a pre-order and maybe they used Amazon to focus on their pre-order and they didn't see the success they wanted to see, or maybe they've done crowdfunding and they didn't see the success they wanted to see, or they didn't want to give away as much money to a crowdfunding site. So they're looking for an alternative. Or so finding spaces where your person hangs out can look like looking in Facebook groups. Facebook groups are gold mine. A great and easy way to kind of be a fly on the wall and not, once again, not being creepy, but to be a fly on the wall and see, okay, what are some things that people are saying about this topic and how are people responding? Or what are commonalities that people
Right.
are saying? Like what are some phrases that people use? And then also looking at blog posts. I know people think blogging is dead. Blogging is not dead. Blogs are
I,
around. They're not going anywhere. There's even platforms that started out to kind of capitalize on blogs, but kind of bring the blogs together.
right.
And then recipes, when people are like, people don't read blogs. I'm like, recipes are blogs. This is the type of
Right.
um, anyway, that's another conversation for another day. And so reading the comments on blog posts. Now, of course, you have to understand what it is that you're looking for, and you have to understand there's some nuance because some people just write all kinds of stuff on blog posts
Right.
and also all kinds of stuff in other places. But looking at those, and if you have no idea who your ideal reader is, start with books that are in your same genre that you feel are going to be in competition with your book. And then also looking at just comments on posts. So looking at comments of people who are that you look up to that are within that genre.
Right.
Looking at comments on social media comments, looking at so public and private social media comments, blog posts, joining groups. So if you have an affinity group that you can be a part of, if it's something where there's an organization, like a fan page, in person as well. And also if you have access to people who are within that ideal audience, the best way actually is to interview them. You don't always have access to them, but if you do, interview
Yeah.
them, ask them a few questions, and then use it to get to know them better and let them know, hey, I'm not going to sell you anything. I just am trying to work with people that are like you. Can I ask you a few questions about XYZ? And so come with like 15 questions, however many they let you ask. And then ask them if you can do it on video or even audio. Some people are not comfortable with that. And so if not, then just scribe it out. And then that way you have that because you have the wording, you have the ways in which they're saying it. And that's going to be very important for you to be able to use in your marketing, to be able to use in your book, and to be able to talk about your book. And so one shift that I had to make with this book, with my current book, Profitable Publishing with Pre-orders, is to be very intentional about using the word pre-order and not using pre-sale.
Uh, that's
Because yeah, I was finding that coming from the business side of things, people use pre-sale, but authors use pre-order. And I'm assuming that's because Amazon uses pre-order. And so they just have run with that. So
okay. Yes. These have been amazing tips. So I know you also have a YouTube channel where you share different tips for authors. Can you tell us how did you get started with that and how are things going with the YouTube? So I'm all about just like share how we can connect with you for sure.
yeah, so yeah, I'm at Shep Publishing on all platforms. And with YouTube, I started it and then I totally did not post anything. So I started it, did probably about 6 months worth of videos, fell off the face of the earth with YouTube, had not been doing anything with it. And then this last year, I started posting in April and then was able to do a weekly video from April to December. And so I was like, I'm going to commit to it to try to see the growth and things like that. And with that, when I first started on YouTube, it was more of how to content
Okay.
and like how to buy an ISBN or how to upload your ebook on Amazon, things like that. And that's because I thought that those were the questions I was getting from the types of clients I was working with is like, how do you do this? How do you do this? And so for reference, the self-publishing clients I work with, they are their own publishers and they keep all rights and royalties. I'm more so their guide and their consultant during the process to help them to reach their goals. And with that, so I like project manage their publishing. And
Right.
so I was basing it off of the questions I was getting from them of like, okay, well, how do I buy this number? Or do I need this important number? Do I need to do my copyright? Things like that. And so I said, okay, let me just make some videos. And that
Yeah.
way I'm not explaining the same thing 15 million times. And so I refer them to those and they get a packet with those things. But then when I came back, I said, I want to do things differently. And so the books that, not books, Lord, the videos that are from this past year are more so helping you to think strategically and to treat your book like a business. So when you said that earlier, I was like, yes, exactly. So it's things such as what's the best place for your pre-order? Should you host it on Amazon? Should you host it on your website? Should you host it someplace else? And that's something I talk about in the book as well to make that decision. And then things such as 5 ways to generate 5 places to sell your book and pros and cons of each. So I did that video last week because of the whole TikTok ban shenanigans. Because a lot of authors rely on income from TikTok Shop to
Yeah.
support their efforts. And so I wanted to show there are other ways you can sell your book and you can still be profitable, whether or not TikTok's here, and also whether or not Amazon is here, because Amazon KDP bans people all the time,
They
um,
do.
warranted or unwarranted. And so you want to make sure you don't have all your eggs in one basket.
Yes, absolutely. So listen, make sure you go and connect and get the tips that Ashley shares on her social media, YouTube and Threads. Listen, I'm like learning to get more consistent
Mhm.
with Threads, but I know you always share like a lot of good tips on there. So I try to reshare when I see those. Yes.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. So when is your new book coming out? Do you have a release date for that yet?
Yeah, so I did have to push it back a bit. It's gonna be next month. So whatever, I'm not sure when you're recording this, but or when this will be shared. But it'll be February 2025. I originally had it for this month, but there were a few hiccups that I wanted to give it its due time and give it justice. And so I'll get a final date after I speak with my editor once I get the second draft over to her, and then I'll feel more confident. I always like to, that's another tip. So if you're like, I'm not sure when my book's gonna come out, you can do a season, you can do a month instead. You don't have to do a specific date just because I like to be transparent with my audience when I can. So obviously you're not gonna tell them all your business, but you
Right.
wanna you wanna just say, hey, things happened, stuff happened, and it just you wanna give it time. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking this time and dropping the gems. I know even just like self-publishing is real publishing, and I think that's definitely something to express to someone who's thinking about what direction they want to take with publishing their book. If you're like, hey, I want to publish, but I don't think that it's going to get me to where I want to go. It's real publishing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It is, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So always, of course, if you can share also, how can we purchase your books as well? I ask that.
Oh yeah, sure. So if you are interested in the profitable publishing with pre-orders, you can visit profitableselfpublishing.com and grab your copy there. And then the rest of my books are available on Amazon and major retailers as well. But most people purchase off of Amazon.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. So, and I just want to ask just a couple more questions. So, for someone who's thinking about self-publishing, what's one piece of advice that you would give to them?
Start your marketing before you finish your book. And I say that because when you're able to document the process while you're writing it, it makes it so much easier for your marketing. And it makes it so that you have people who are excited to purchase your book when it comes out. And that can look as simple as doing those over the shoulder videos of like when you're typing, or you could share 3 tips from your book. So if it's a mark, not mark, if it's a business book or if it's a nonfiction book, um, for example, if you're like somebody in the exercise industry, you could share 3 tips how to cut belly fat or something like that. And then those things are already going to attract your audience because you're kind of like feeding them. It's called seeding, but you're kind of like seeding them things that are going to be in the book later. And then when they get to the book, they're like, "Oh yeah, this is familiar," because people think, "Okay, I've heard of something. I've heard this thing one time. I'm going to remember it." Most people do not remember the things they've heard, like at all. And so, if you're able to keep continuously do that messaging and continually have it to be something that they hear repeatedly, whether it's through reading the book or it's through getting an email from you or it's through seeing you on social media, you're going to reinforce things and you're going to be thought of as more of an authority in the space because you are consistent with your messaging. And so, starting before your book is done, even if you don't post the content, even if you don't send the emails, at least documenting it. So, taking the pictures, doing the screen recordings, taking the videos, that kind of stuff, because then you at least have it to be reflective and say, "Oh, I remember a month ago I was sending edits to my editor and I missed my deadline," and all this stuff. Like, take people on the journey during the process.
Absolutely. Yes, and it helps build that reader connection, right? You're sharing your personal, not all the personal things, but you're sharing your journey as you're going through the process. So thank you so much for sharing all of these tips and gems. So I always like to ask this one last question. So when you think about your own journey as a publisher, marketing strategist, and author, what
Mhm.
impact do you want your brand and your books to leave on the world?
Wow. Okay. So I want authors to understand that they should be able to get paid handsomely for their books and to understand that income makes impact possible
Yeah.
and that they don't have to feel bad about it. They don't have to say, "Oh, do you want to buy my book?" No, be proud of yourself. You've spent this time and energy working on this wonderful thing that you're giving to the world, and it's a gift that you're giving it away, and just stand in that. And so being able to create a book is something that a very small percentage of people do in the world. And it can feel like something we minimize because we're around authors. Like, oh, everybody got a book, everybody's writing a book, but it's not writing a book. And so really standing your authority and your power and understanding that it's okay to be rewarded for the work that you're doing because what you're creating is going to be able to help people across the world. So
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I love that income makes impact possible. So I think that's very important. So, listeners, as always, when you tune in for this episode, leave us a review, right? Drop a comment, share this with someone who's thinking about publishing a book or someone who has released a book. And they're needing some different tips on how to market, connect with their target audience. Like, subscribe, share, and then, of course, make sure you follow Ashley on social media. Check out her YouTube channel and then grab a new copy of her book. It'll be releasing very soon. Until next time, take care.
thank you.